All right. A big, warm welcome online. We are so pleased to be part of the supportive Food Prize Foundation. Hot topic. Leveraging and generating soil evidence to inform policy. And this event is co-hosted by the Coalition of Action for Soil Health, CIFOR-ICRAF. My name is Lee Winowicki. I'm a soil scientist based in Nairobi at CIFOR-ICRAF and CASH. And today we have a few objectives of our event. And we know that there's a lot of events at the Borlaug Dialogue around food and nutrition security, and we want to highlight and showcase the latest advancements in soil health monitoring and how this can be included, integrated, and used to inform decision-making at the policy level, decision-making processes. We'd also like to advocate for an enabling environment to build healthy soil ecosystems and really catalyze multi-stakeholder collaboration for soil health. So I would like to encourage everyone to write your name and institution in the chat. So I will start so that we can know who's online, where you're based, and so we can kind of start building this community of practice virtually today. Thank you so much for joining. These are the objectives. And to help us meet these objectives, we have designed an interactive session. I'll set the scene with a few slides. We have Dr. Rattan Lal providing a keynote presentation. Then we have a fantastic panel with Dr. Sieglinde Snapp from CIMMYT, Dr. Ekwe Dosa from IFDC, and as we are committed to bringing youth voices into the conversation, we have Ivy Atieno from YPARD Kenya. We will have closing remarks from Phrang, read by Daniela Solis. So let's get started. We're talking about soil, but sometimes I feel that we're not using the same definition. So I really like to encourage all of us to just think about, what is soil? What is soil? Why are we talking so much about soil? So I like to say that soil is the biologically active layer of the Earth's surface. And as a reminder, it has physical characteristics, biological aspects, and chemical aspects. And often we're always focusing on the chemical or physical, but I wanted to place the biology right in the center. It is so critical for healthy soil ecosystems. So, speaking of healthy soil, what is healthy soil? Sometimes we can look and there's some visual aspects that we can observe in soil, but I think it's nice if we have a definition that we can agree with, and that is, this is the definition I like. Healthy soil is the ability of soil to sustain the productivity, diversity, and environmental services of terrestrial ecosystems. And I like this because it embraces that there's multiple ecosystem services such as carbon storage, water regulation, providing a place for microorganisms, macrofauna, all of this biodiversity. And so with this definition, today, I want us to think about how we can broaden the scope of soil health to include these multiple dimensions. I'm based here in Nairobi, and we have OFR 100 to restore 100 million hectares of land. We know that healthy soil is key for ecosystem restoration. We also know soil can store 3 times more carbon than any other ecosystem. So it's critical for climate change mitigation as well as adaptation. I mentioned biodiversity. And of course, we know that healthy soil is essential to food and nutrition security. But why are we here today? We're here today because we are having over 40% of the Earth's surface being degraded. So the soil is unable to provide those ecosystem services, and it's negatively impacting 3.2 billion people globally. That means business as usual is not an option. And our panelists will highlight this and the solutions that they're bringing forward. And I'd like to call for increased investments in implementation and scaling, but also monitoring to fill these key knowledge gaps and to inform policy, and hopefully bring in some financing. As I mentioned, I'm at CIFOR-ICRAF, and we are really holding this central to what we do. We have science where we bring in soil and land health monitoring, including soil organic carbon accounting. We bring in innovations to scale these soil and land health assessments using soil spectroscopy, remote sensing, machine learning. But if we do only the top layer, it's not enough. We have to use these data to inform policy and to scale it so that we can really see us bending the curve on land degradation and seeing restored ecosystems. And we do this by implementing systematic field surveys that have been implemented in over 45 countries globally. This has enabled statistical comparisons, and I'll show you production of accurate maps. How can we scale this? Well, we need innovation. We shine light on soil. So we use soil spectroscopy to reduce the cost by 90%, but also increase the number of samples we can analyze, 20 to 30,000 samples every year. And these data are used to produce maps, for example, of soil erosion. Those hotspot red maps are hotspots of erosion, and we can track farmers' practices, pastoral practices, forestry over time. We can also produce maps of soil organic carbon. Now, what am I trying to say? Our panel today is going to also highlight how we need to change the paradigm of soil health monitoring from something that's very top down to something that's really community-based, farmer-led, because we found that by integrating communities into the monitoring, even decision makers, policymakers, bringing them to the field, investing time in monitoring. Once we have the data and we analyze the data together, it's much more easily internalized and increases the likelihood that these data could be used for decision-making policy, which is what we're going to talk about today. And as part of this, the Coalition of Action, which was built out of the UN Food System Summit, and has a main goal to scale soil health globally. And our 4 targets are policy integration, expanding research and direct development, increasing the number of hectares of land under healthy soil practices, and that financial commitment. And one of the things I really want to talk about today, and we even have a representative, is our Youth for Soil initiative. Because in order to do all of those goals, it cannot be, as we say in Kenya, the mzees that are going to do it, but we need to engage youth, bring in their voices so that we can develop innovative solutions and really make sure we're having an inclusive environment. So with that, I encourage everyone to scan this barcode and read the 2023 Cash Annual Report. It's really fascinating to see where we've come from the UN Food System Summit. We're very grateful to have Dr. Snapp on our steering committee also presenting today. And the co-founder of the Coalition of Action for Soil Health is Dr. Rattan Lal, who I think all of you know won the 2020 World Food Prize for soil-centric approaches. And he has provided us with a 5-minute video. And this is really going to test my ability here to multitask. So I'm going to play his video, and I invite you all to listen. So with that, I will hand it over to Dr. Lal.
Colleagues, friends, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for the event of CASH. The word CASH, C-A-4-S-H, is synonymous with Dr. Leanne. They go together. She has made CASH the visibility because of her hard work, dedication, and commitment. She and her team need to be commended for this dedication. Why this is important, CASH? Because several Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations Agenda 2030 depend on soil. And poverty, goal number 1, and hunger, goal number 2, clean energy, goal number 7, clean water, goal number 6, the climate action, goal number 3, good health and well-being, goal number 15, life on land, they all depend on soil. One of the climate action example is that the soil has a technical technical, 2.5 petagram of carbon per year, that's 25% of the fossil fuel emission. If we can combine between the impact of afforestation and soil by 2100, soil have a technical potential about 180 gigaton of sequestration, vegetation another 155, total drawdown atmospheric CO2, 157 parts per million. To achieve that, the farmers must be rewarded about $50 per carbon equivalent, and carbon CO2 credit is 1 metric ton of CO2, $50 per credit. That's a price which will motivate farmer to adopt nature positive agriculture practices, which mean protecting, managing, and restoring soil health, strengthening biodiversity, improving water quality and renewability, adopting negative emission farming, not zero emission, negative emission, reducing input of chemicals, using biostimulants and organic amendments, promoting a biocircular economy, supporting the One Health concept, and of course, using precision agriculture or digital innovation. In that regard, the long-term objective of CASH, as formulated in the discussion, the World Food Summit, enhancing cooperation among multiple stakeholders, especially with private sector, promoting on-the-ground adoption of best management practices, developing tools for measurement, monitoring, verification of soil health and its indicators, advocating a system-based soil health agenda, implementing an action plan for restoring soil health. And here I must mention the program that we are hoping to develop called Managing Soil Health in Africa, MASHA. I hope MASHA will materialize, perhaps under CASH. Developing a protocol for payments of ecosystem services, empowering farmers and land managers to adopt site-specific pest management practices, strengthening human resource capital, enhancing respectability of the soil health profession, alleviating drudgery of the farming operations, among some of the objectives. So the Coalition for Action on Soil Health, under the leadership of Leanne and her team, it calls specifically for the establishment of a multi-stakeholder coalition to facilitate the adoption and scaling up of soil health restoration practices with the outcomes of growth, productivity, rural livelihood, climate, and nature. The Coalition of Soil Health supports Soil Hub by the need for private sector participation engagement, acknowledging tangible outcome-related goals and solutions, highlighting the work that is being accomplished through existing initiatives and alliances, and emphasizing the need for science-based approaches and measurements. And I think these goals are doable, achievable under the leadership and under the dedication, commitment of Dr. Leanne, which I think is doing a great job in implementing the CASH. Have a great meeting. Thanks so much.
Oh, it's wonderful to hear Dr. Lal speaking, and we really appreciate his, intervention. And I'm really glad that he mentioned the need to collaborate with other initiatives. So this is exactly what we have planned for today. And I think I might be having a small problem with my video, but because Dr. Lal's not here, we just wanted to take a moment and for people to scan in the Menti. So you can either use your phone and scan this, or go to menti.com and use the code. And we have a few questions to kind of get us warmed up on the soil topic. So let's see. And maybe, Hannah, if you put the menti.com in the chat, then we can also use that.
She has.
Oh, she's so good. Thank you. Let's see if my video is working again. Great. So I will stop sharing and I will let Daniela see if we can get some of the results. And I see my video is working. Great. Excellent. So I know people will be responding. So please go ahead and add some responses. Nice. Nutrition, life. Oh, I love that. Life is soil. Soil is life. Excellent. And then Daniela, you need to, or I can reset it. You need to let us go to the next one, or I can reset it so that we can, yeah, participants can go through themselves. So you should be able to see the next one. Okay. What is our biggest challenge in scaling soil health? Political will, extension, resource mobilization. Yeah. Oof. Interesting. Do we think there's conflicts between stakeholders? Interesting. Great. This is good. Good feedback. Keep forest heterogeneity. Great. And I think and then the last one is, what innovations in soil health monitoring are you most excited about? That's hard. What are we most excited about? Yeah. And one of the things that we're really finding is that there's such a need for this type of information and data, but it just, we have to scale what we're doing. So I think that today we really want to hear from everyone about, what are some of these tools that will allow us to really scale. Thanks so much, Daniela. I think I'll go back. Oh, Indigenous knowledge. That's great. GIS, remote sensing. We have some remote sensing gurus here. Great. So thank you so much, Daniela. So I will go back and thank you to everyone. I love doing some Menti, and maybe if we get some more responses at the end, we can share a few more. So now I'm so thrilled to introduce our panel. So we actually have an esteemed panel here. So we have Dr. Sieglinde Snapp from CIMMYT, Dr. Ekwe Dosa from IFDC, and Ivy Atieno from YPARD Kenya. And I will just let them share their videos on. So hopefully, can we see Dr. Snapp? Dr. Dosa, can you turn your video on? And Ivy? Great. So, I tried to set the scene a little bit. The first question will go to Dr. Snapp. So as Dr. Lal highlighted, we need massive partnerships and multi-stakeholder action. We cannot do this alone. And I know that all three of our panelists are actually engaging in really big, large-scale initiatives. So I would like you to go first, Dr. Snapp, and you will introduce yourself with your proper title. But I heard about this program. It's called VACS. I think it's called VAX, Vision for Adapted Crops and Soils. And everyone's talking about it here on the African continent, even though it originated the idea within the US State Department. So could you share with us how VAX supports productivity and resilience, and how VAX is actually innovating to scale to the hectares we need? So over to you, Dr. Snapp.
Thank you so much. So yeah, my name is Sig Snapp at CIMMYT. I am the Global Director for the Sustainable Agri-Food Systems Program. In other words, it's all about soils and agronomy and economy and obviously gender. So I am really pleased that you asked me about VAX. Can you share the slides? I also have them if needed. Perfect. So VAX is an opportunity, right? It's all about public-private partnerships and soils. It's also about crops. Next slide. I just want us to remind us that we actually have a real challenge here. We always are thinking about the degradation challenge, about climate change, which is impacting us everywhere with floods and droughts, which again is all about soil resilience, right? But another one, a related challenge, is that the whole world is simplifying. At the same time, we're finding out meta-analysis, papers in science, everyone is really experiencing that diversity, crop diversity, particularly some of these crops that have been neglected in the past that we're now calling opportunity crops, but sometimes they were called orphan crops, such as dryland crops like pigeon pea and millet. You can see how they're really crashing in India, which is one of the most diverse and plant-forward diets in the world. So if it's crashing there and we're seeing increases in cereals, we have a problem, right? The world needs calories, but it also needs nutrition. And so if you lose your diversity, you lose your biodiversity, which of course with the COP going on is really important to think about. And also with the climate COP coming up, carbon sequestration, as you said, soils are so important. We know that you do not get sequestration without diversity. So how can we turn this around? And it indeed did start with, one of the World Food Prize leaders this year, Carrie Fowler, but this has become a movement. Next slide. Because there's really more and more attention to how do we get diversification back at the table. And not only that, I want to talk a bit about how those crops then can be part of sparing and sharing pathways and build soil resilience, which is, after all, what this is all about. So both crops adapted to different soils and crops that improve soils as we go and that are inclusive, right? And then it does come back, it did come out in the METI, this idea that extension is part in a knowledge-intensive technologies, which so much of regenerative agriculture and agroecology is knowledge-intensive to revitalize soil health. We need to think about how do we scale extension. So these are the three VAX investment areas. Crop diversification has really been on the table, the initial investments, but soils are very much there as well, and innovations and extension. So the next slide. I think that let's first talk about crop diversification. Historically, a lot of crop breeding, whether in Africa or in Mexico, has looked on the left, right? Irrigation facilities. Even today, I got another request to approve some. And I worry a little bit, are these representative soils? Because in my own early work in Malawi, we found that soil organic matter was 3 times higher on research stations than on farmers' fields right across the fence row. So are they representative? And the other thing is, what are we breeding? Because there's sorghum on the left and sorghum on the right. And in the middle, some bambara, just to kind of show you research station trials, what they look like. And yet farmers want really quite a different animal, if I can say that. On the right there, you see something tall, probably has deep roots, sequestering carbon, it's providing construction material, sometimes a sweetness snack. Sorghum is very diverse. So how do we get these kind of diverse crops unless we do crop breeding that is soil aware and that is gender and inclusive aware, all the farmer preferences, right? So this is complex, but we have more tools at our disposal. We have ability to quickly assess what are different opinions, what is Indigenous knowledge. So next slide. We are moving on in different ways to try to realize soil health at scale through the VAX initiative. And again, you know, you can become a VAX champion. This is all partners invited. Please do join this effort. So we know that soils has the fact that between here and a meter away, you see extreme heterogeneity for some soil properties. So we need local solutions, and we need both land sparing approaches and land sharing. I don't think we should exclude either. Both need to be at the table. I think many people are coming to that conclusion. So we heard from Rattan Lal about the need for different ways to measure, because after all, soil is a slow process. So we need solutions where we can start to see the changes at very local levels, and then also through remote sensing. Some people call this space to place. So it's the idea that because you know where you are in the world, then your handheld devices work better because there's the soil grids to lock into. But then what is the local knowledge? So it's really needed, and yet it's hard. Change is hard. Next slide. So what we're trying to do is really bring together the partners, public society, whether you're talking public sector at the local universities, whether you're talking, you know, research innovation centers, private sector, more and more coming in with different types of big data analytics, but they have to be grounded and make sense, as there needs to be a public voice, and in fact, a civil society voice from organizations that articulate what are the local needs, because big data often is not aware, doesn't really have much training data, does it, from the global south? So we really need public, private, and civil society working together, because otherwise how will we come up with the options that can then be fine-tuned, right? So we need decision guides. So there are a lot of apps out there. I think we all know that. But how many actual actionable information around soil health that farmers can then make their own choices on how to fine-tune conservation agriculture, or organic agriculture, whatever works for their markets and their preferences? How do they do that if they can't access options and learn where their soils need to be improved and where they've done a great job? So we get that kind of feedback loop, right? And what are the, you know, opportunity crops, part of the VAX, again, crops and soils working together. How can they access pigeon pea to improve their soils, their nitrogen and their phosphorus cycling, for example, combined with other interventions? So I think if you come with one word out of the VAX movement, it's about local agency, a learning agenda. So extension that incorporates the latest in communication technologies in order to provide voice for local farmer organizations, voice for how do we interact with each other as public, private, and civil society. So these innovations and extension are really, in the end of the day, the main VAX agenda. Next slide. I think that's it, actually. So I really appreciate being part of the coalition and look forward to this continuing conversation and learning about Youth for Soil and other important partners here, because it will take all of us at the table, right, to make this difference. So thanks again. I'll put a link to the VAX for further information in the chat. And look forward to your questions. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Sig. Can we give Sig a virtual applause? And thank you for bringing in the concept of local agency. This is critically important. And I really, I think the coalition is signing up to be a VAX champion, and I encourage others on this call to also engage. I think it's really exciting. I would like people to start adding their comments and questions in the chat, and then we will do Q&A after. So let's please share your questions in the chat. And Dr. Dosa, I heard Dr. Snapp that kind of name checking a IFDC-led project funded by USA called Space to Place. And I know that you're involved in a number of really exciting initiatives to scale soil health, especially on the African continent. So please introduce yourself, and I would like you to share some of the innovations that you are scaling here in Africa. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Lee. My name is Ekwe Dosa. I'm a soil scientist. I'm a director of soil health. I work with IFDC and I'm based in Cotonou, in Benin. So it's a pleasure to be here to speak about soil health because, as we all know, the ability of soil to function, to provide ecosystem services is critical to human survival. So that's why I'm very glad to talk about some of the innovations that we implement here at IFDC to promote soil health and to ensure that smallholder farmers, they keep their lands productive for a long time. They also have an improved livelihood using the land for agriculture. Let me share my screen quickly here. So I will talk about some of the key technologies that we've been using here. And I will start with, let me do this, sorry. Yeah, let me start with fertilizer recommendations. We know that fertilizer is a key to soil health just because of the chemical part of the soil needs to be maintained in good condition for the soil to be able to function. So that's why we address fertilizer recommendation, just because generally we are using blanket fertilizer for many crops. And for a couple of years, we've been addressing that flaw by fine-tuning the fertilizer recommendations. And we do that based on soil information. We do soil mapping. That will give us the initial information to fine-tune the fertilizer recommendation that can be validated and then provide with a more effective and cost-effective formulation for farmers. We also use some modeling tools to arrive at improved fertilizer recommendations. And one output from these two using place information like, soil maps, soil information, and also some image from modeling, from satellite extrapolation, also soil modeling. We come to the S2P, which is the space to place approach for fertilizer recommendations. That is aimed at providing relevant information for soil fertility management to smallholder farmers. It's a plot-specific one because it is based on what the current farmers' conditions and also what they can afford and what are the choices and things like that. This has been successfully implemented in Ethiopia, and we are expanding it to many other ecosystems in Africa. Alongside, we also put an emphasis on fertilizer efficiency technologies to minimize the losses and to also reduce environmental pollution. For nitrogen fertilizer application, especially for irrigated ecosystem, the urea displacement has yielded satisfactory result where we can reduce the amount of fertilizer that is applied to rice by 20% and also reduce the losses by more than 75%. And this is a very significant breakthrough that is changing the image of fertilizer, nitrogen fertilizer application in rice ecosystem. And generally for farmers, for any kind of formulation, we make sure that they apply the 4R And those who cannot afford to use the normal recommendation in terms of rate can also apply micro dosing as fertilizer, which is improving considerably the yields. Because now things are getting very on the higher side, we want farmers who have limited resources, financial resources, to be able to take steps to address fertilizer nutrient deficiency in their soils. We put an emphasis on recycling of nutrients and also making best use of the available resources. Any opportunity like organic resources, we are working on combining them with mineral fertilizer, especially in case of when people are involved in poultry husbandry and when there's a substantial amount of droppings. We're working on producing an organo-mineral fertilizer that combines both the organic stuffs and also mineral fertilizer that farmers can apply at once and achieve good results. It's a new trend that to address the phosphate deficiency, which is crucial in many soils in sub-Saharan Africa. There's an option where we can activate phosphate rock by adding to it a small amount, 1/4 of the soluble phosphate. And as a result, there's an improvement on the agronomic efficiency of the phosphate rock. Not necessarily as comparable to the soluble phosphate, but we get from 60% to even 100%, which is interesting. And of course, all this encouraging farmers to adopt the effective cropping systems based on their aspiration. We encourage them to do appropriate rotation, and also if they want to do some intercroppings, it has to involve some compatible species and proper management to avoid some competition, etc. Overall, the key to the solution to the soil health solution and issue is an integration of practices, especially making sure that the soil is replenished of the organic carbon that it needs, because organic carbon is key to soil health. And when the soil is depleted of organic matter, it's very important to address that one. So as much as possible, and based on locally available resources, we encourage farmers to implement the integration of organic and mineral resources in soil health management. So one key it's an approach to the way we want to implement integrated soil fertility management that is yielding good results in terms of rate of adoption is the PIP. That's the French terminology, but it means an integrated farm planning approach, which puts the farmers or household at the center of decision-making, basically identifying the constraint to agricultural productivity and also knowing what are the solutions locally available and adapted solution to address those constraints. So those are the things that the project can facilitate it, and the farmers is aware of what are the options that are available and what are the strengths and weaknesses and also the costs that are associated with those technologies. And from there, the farmers will select some of the options that he would like to test on his plot to address the constraints. And that sort of thing, the project is facilitating that kind of testing of technology. And the innovation farmer willing to do that sort of testing serve as an extension agent, because when he does the demonstration, there is a follow-up to see if things work well. If not, if there's a need to do some adjustment, yes, those things are done together with the farmer. But when things work well, the farmers also use his plot to teach, to communicate with other farmers, has run some field school and things like that to explain them what are the steps and how he came to a result that he obtained. And that sort of thing is encouraging and put the farmers in a position to try that kind of those technologies to also solve the problems they are having. So they are constraints like, slope at the landscape level are always addressed the communal level. It's not a farmer-specific effort. It's a communal engagement in addressing those constraints because it has a landscape implication. So those are the keys to the integrated farm planning approach, which is yielding good results in terms of farmers' engagement and also adoption. The key projects that are promoting PEEP in Africa, we have the Pagris in Burundi and also the Bright Project in Uganda. So
Great, thank you so much, Ekwe. Is this your last slide?
Almost.
I think
Okay.
if we could just have this as your last slide, I think that'd be great. Thank you.
Yes, so here, just, showing the Soil Value Program, which is a 10-year program covering 4 countries, Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, Nigeria, and mainstreaming soil health across those regions. And we have 5 interaction areas. So the first one is the bonding of agro-technologies. That's why I went through the technologies that we have and making sure they are adapted to the ecologies, all those things, and also addressing the watershed issues, landscape, watershed management, and to be able for farmers to address the constraints that they are facing. Let me talk briefly about the tracking of impact here, very, very brief. So the project has developed some indicators, impact indicators as farm land converted to sustainable use land, and also some outcome indicators that are listed over here. But one very key of those indicators is the qualitative soil health index. So, and this index will help monitor progress in achieving soil health. And you will see here, for instance, some of the indicators that we are developing here are very practical. The farmers can use them, and they have physical indicators, including erosion, soil compaction, soil aggregation, some biological that the farmers can test, take the soil, smell it, and feel it, and make sure that, we can assess if there's a life in that soil and if there are some issues. Crop indicators, the plants that are on the land, how do they behave? Do they look healthy? All those things, how is the soil, the root proliferation can tell you something about the health of the soil and things like that. And of course, we are also promoting farmers testing of soil pH, not in the lab, but in the field for farmers to know what are those constraints and how they can go about that one. So let me leave it here and address questions that the audience may have. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ekwe. This is fantastic. If you could stop sharing your screen, let's give Ekwe, Dr. Dosa, a round of applause. And one thing that I heard from Dr. Snapp's and Dr. Ekwe's presentation was this paradigm shift for really making sure that we're developing context-specific approaches. In the old days, we used to only do demo plots, and we would say, here's the demo plot. Farmers, please come to this plot and then, uptake the practices on your farm. But, we know that that doesn't necessarily work, that farmers need to tailor and change and adapt the practices to meet his or her needs. So I really heard that message coming out strongly from both of your presentations. So thank you so much. And I see we'll keep getting questions in the chat. And now I'm so excited to bring in Ivy Atieno, our youth advocate here. And Ivy and I have been together the last 2 days in Nairobi talking about soil. And one of the things that I really want to hear from you, Ivy, is from your experience. What are some effective ways to engage and empower youth in soil health initiatives, whether it's monitoring, implementation, policy. And feel free to mention the Youth for Soil Initiative. Want to hear your voice. Over to you, Ivy.
Hello. It's a pleasure to have me here. And according to what Leila has said, it's really important to have youth in these initiatives. And I will think we should just have them all round, from the beginning to the end, from policy, implementation, monitoring. It's really important. And I'll use the statistics of Kenya, because I think it's where I am and I've done most of the work. Like 75% of the population in Kenya is youth. So that means everywhere you go, when you meet 10 people, 7 of them are young people. So that means if you make policies, if you implement anything, if you implement projects, make policies, monitor projects without the youth, then it will be ineffective because they hold the largest part of the population. They are the largest people that are affecting soil. So if there is anybody that is interfering with the youth, when you put with the soil, when you put 10 people, 7 of them are young people. So we really need to involve them from the start, when we are making the policies, when we're implementing them, and when we are monitoring on how they are doing, on how the policies are progressing. So, and it's really important. I'm happy for Youth for Soil, because it's an important avenue that has started involving the youth. And they really have a very interesting way of doing things, where a young person who is interested and really has the zeal to learn about the soil is attached to someone who is a professional in the soil through a mentorship program. So I'm interested in learning much about soil, learning about the policies that are being done are coming up that are affecting soils, and anything that is affecting soil, then I'm attached to someone. Let me use an example. Probably I'm attached to Leila, who is a soil scientist. So for me, I am an agronomist. I don't know much about what the soil is, but I will learn from her because throughout her profession, she's been working in soil. So from there, I'm able, while I go to the field to work with the farmers and to work with the young people, I'm able to transfer the soil information that I've learned to Leila, from Leila, and that is a really interesting part. And then it also opens opportunity for the young people. Like for me, I was privileged to join a workshop at ICRAF, where I learned a lot about soil that I didn't know much information. So I'm able to transfer that to young people. While we meet in our networks, I'm able to empower them in regard to soil health. So I really think it's really important to get the young people involved, and it starts from the beginning. Where you start is where you start with the youth. As we are starting to plan, you start with them and work with them all through. Thank you.
Ivy, thank you so much for bringing that up, and about really how, in Kenya, such a good example of the percent of the population that is youth. And we often say, we inherit the land from our grandparents, right? And so, if we're leaving degraded land to the next generation, we really need to bend that curve and change that cycle. And I think by engaging with youth, like you said, across the whole spectrum, from the beginning of a project or implementation will be critical. Can you talk a little bit about what YPARD is? And I heard YPARD does, farm out days or cafe roundtables. How do you see these as possible ways to bring together stakeholders? Thanks, Ivy.
Okay, so YPARD is a network of young people who are interested in agriculture. So as its name is, Young Professionals for Agricultural Development. So it's a network for young people who are interested in agriculture in a vast way. Those interested in agriculture to conserve the land, those interested in agriculture for food systems, those who are interested in agriculture for agronomy. So for us, we come with different ideas, different knowledge. We come together, we share this knowledge among ourselves, and we are able to come up with a network of information that we are able to work together with farmers at local level and also other young people in the rural areas who have not had this information or who are not part of the platform, to encourage them to know this information because it is important for them. So I really think in all this, information sharing is really important, because I know something, and YPARD has enabled that, because I know the agriculture in Kenya, but Jana knows the agriculture in Germany. And someone else, Trisha, knows the agriculture in her country. So we are able to bring this information together in one forum, and we're able to exchange and know what she is going through in a different country in terms of agriculture, and help each other. Her problem, she tells her the solution. So if I come through the same problem, because climate change is affecting all of us, regardless of where you are, her solution or her adaptation measure, I'm able to use it in my country, or the mitigation measure. So she can tell me, as we are at this level, so you people are a step behind us. So if you do this, you'll be able to avoid to get to where we are. So that is why we have YPARD, and that is what YPARD is doing as in a brief, in a summary.
I love it. Thank you so much. And before I go back to Dr. Snapp, there is a question for you, Ivy, and I think it is a really relevant question. It's about, land tenure and land ownership. It says from Faisa, and unfortunately, many youth are not landowners and not really having a lot of decision-making power on the farming practices. How do you manage to encourage youth to participate despite not owning the land yet?
Okay, that's a great question. And I'll say the part where our parents own land, it's a policy that was made when we were not there. So that's why I'm saying it's important to also involve youth in policy making. Right now, when the policies about land are being made, we are able to voice out the challenges that we are having. So our parents own the land, now we can't do this. So when the policies are being made at the root, and our challenges have been discussed, then we are able to have policies that are friendly to us. I remember yesterday we said we are trying to make channels that are youth friendly. So we will also try to come up with policies that are youth friendly, that involve us, because those policies do not involve us, but we really need to start. And I will encourage a lot of youth to get into the policy forums, because we shy out from them, and then policies that are made, policies that negatively affect us. So let's get to those forums, let's involve ourselves so that we are able to come up with policies and solutions that help us. And gradually we're going to have the changes. We're going to have policies that favor us.
I actually think we will. I think we will, because I'm so inspired by you and by so many young professionals. So I'm actually positive. Sig, you're writing in the chat. So would you like to come in on this topic? And also, did I hear youth mentioned in the VAX initiative, or what's some opportunities as well?
So absolutely, youth, I think, are very much part of, you think about a lot of these neglected crops, vegetables, and dryland crops are where youth can come in with, new types of entrepreneurship and value add. So I think, I mean, this question about land tenure is really key, isn't it? So those go hand in hand together. And I think that there's some African models we can look at, new ways to envision. I put one in the chat. In Zambia, I've seen where the idea that land deeds can hold not just the parents or even external land users, such as the elites from the cities, but also, those who have a real interest, including youth. A deed can actually record that, who is planning to inherit. And so there can be more inclusive ways to look at land ownership. And so I really support. And this is something we could bring up in VACs. Currently, the VACs investments are around plant breeding into the main, and then some FAO soil mapping. So we need to be much more creative and make sure that youth are at the table as we invent what VACs looks like, not just bring in at the end. Thank you.
Love that. And thanks for bringing up positive experiences. Ekwe, I see another project question here in the chat. I want to spotlight you. If you can turn on your video. I have no idea how to spotlight anymore. And so I will ask IT to do that. So this is a really good question in the chat, and thank you so much for asking it. It's about there was one question about, challenges, but I like this question about feedback. In fact, Ivy, the last 2 days, all we talked about was farmers and making sure this information reaches farmers. So Ekwe, in just in a minute, could you talk about ways to amplify the voices of farmers and how to make sure this information reaches the farmers in a way they want to receive it? So Ekwe, over to you. Thanks.
Well, in terms of communication, as I said, our new approach to scaling up integrated soil fertility management, it's a very participative one. So we make sure that the farmer is at the center of the decision making and in the implementation of the technology through some demonstration. That's one thing. It makes it easier. It's a farmer-to-farmer extension. Farmers communicate directly with their peers and explain whatever they're doing, which is more effective. In addition to that, the mass radio, rural radios, and avenues like that, they are very useful in disseminating that information, raising awareness on opportunities and what is taking place, where they can reach those information and things like that. I think it's also helped. They give information on whatever is going on, what are the opportunities, what are the outputs from those things, and where you can also access the technical information, the extension services being part of those things, and also the private sector supplying the inputs that you need to use. I think all these together are making a difference in reaching out to farmers.
Thank you so much. And I really love the conversation going on here and in the chat. This is absolutely fantastic. And I think, we talked about generating and leveraging evidence for policy. And the really critical part is making sure there's engagement in the data collection and in the feedback. So I really wanted to appreciate everyone's statements. And we actually had invited Phrang Roy to give closing remarks from the Indigenous people's perspective, because we really are trying to build inclusive community here. And Phrang, at the very last minute, like 5 minutes before we got on, he had an emergency and could not join. However, he shared with us a statement, and Daniela has offered to read this statement. So I'll spotlight her, and from the Indigenous perspective. And so Daniela, thank you so much. I don't know how you'll try to imitate Phrang's voice, but you can read it in your own voice. We leave it to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Lee. And yes, I did want to say this is going to be an extract from his statement. We will be posting it on our website, so you can actually read the full statement. There's a lot of insights into study they conducted, but yeah, I'll try to, obviously, I'll try to share his message. So Indigenous peoples have a sacred relationship with nature from which stems their value systems that uphold and govern their food systems. Their food systems are very much nature-based. Indigenous peoples' approaches to soil health care, like their approach to food systems, are very much deeply rooted in their value system and fundamentally stem from the philosophy of nurturing nature. Indigenous peoples' communities recognize the importance of specific plants for improving soil health. Indigenous peoples' farmers recognize different soil types and have their own classification, which guides what crops can be grown well in a particular soil type and in which crop combinations. We believe that policy approaches must consider the holistic approach of Indigenous peoples' soil health management through landscape management approaches. Indigenous peoples' soil health management, unlike conventional soil health care, is holistic and spans across a spectra from plot to the landscape. At a minimum, policy approaches need to recognize the potential of Indigenous peoples' soil health care approaches and must facilitate the co-creation of soil health care practices, drawing from the wisdom of Indigenous peoples' practices. This, we believe, should be a precondition before we even consider a soil health monitoring mechanism. So thank you, everyone. That was on behalf of Phrang Roy, who is the coordinator of the Indigenous Partnership for Agrobiodiversity and Food Sovereignty. And as I mentioned, we will share with everyone as we will post it on the website so you can read the full statement. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much, Daniela, for being willing to read that. Thank you to our esteemed panelists, and thank you to everyone who participated. We're thrilled to engage virtually in the Borlaug Dialogue and supported by the World Food Prize Foundation. Thank you so much, Ivy, Sig, Ekwe, Daniela, and all participants. Have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your days. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, the coalition, for organizing. Thanks, Lee. And
Thank
everyone.
you.
Your
Thank
interventions were
you.
fantastic.